All right, let's talk about civics and government. This is what we're going to study this unit. The first thing we need to understand is what is civics. In civics, we study citizens. Must do, that's your duties and responsibilities. What is it that citizens get in return? There's a right. It's different in every nation, but basically the process works like this. If you, the citizen, fulfill your duties, then a government will protect your rights. That's basically how it works. That's the thing we study in civics. We're not studying human beings like in biology or anatomy. We're studying human beings in the sense of what are you allowed to do in a specific country? What is expected of you, and what do you get in return? As long as you do your 4 duties, which is obey the law, pay your taxes, serve in the jury, serve in the military, you do those 4 things because you have to. Those are all mandatory. In return, the government protects your rights. It's a pretty good deal. You do 4 things and you get all of your freedoms protected. I'll take that any day of the week. Government, to make government really simple, a government is basically a group that maintains order. Governments are different all around the world. Governments have changed a lot throughout the evolution of man. Basically, they serve to create order. But more advanced governments do something different. They actually protect your rights. They're not just maintaining order. They go the extra, they go the full length and protect your rights. You do the duty to protect your rights. Now, if you went to North Korea, as you see on the guy's shirt, governments aren't necessarily protecting your rights. You have to fulfill your duties, but they're not protecting your rights. So if we went to North Korea, you can see this headline right here of what actually happens in North Korea. Their government is not necessarily protecting the rights of the citizens. Thought I had some more pictures. Anyway. As we move on, terms that you need to know. There are 6 terms in particular that you need to know according to the state of North Carolina. Separation of powers. That is simply taking our government and dividing it into 3 branches. There's a branch that deals with making laws, there's a branch that deals with enforcing the laws, and there's a branch that deals with interpreting the laws. 3 different branches. It's not all one giant government that does everything. We have separated the power of the government. That government that's supposed to maintain order, that government that's supposed to protect your rights, there are 3 separate sections of that government doing those things. Not just one giant government doing it all. Here are some historic examples of governments that were not separated. If you allow one person or one group to do all the roles of the government, a lot of times that government can then become abusive. That is one of the keys to separating them. And that's going to connect to limited government, which we're going to talk about in a second. But there again, you have a legislative, you have the executive, you have a judicial. Judicial usually is the toughest to understand, but it's not that difficult. Mainly they interpret whether someone has broken the law, and they're going to interpret exactly what the law says. Yeah, you can't really read that, I'm sorry. It's not showing up well. So basically, here's your founding fathers arguing about, hey, how do we set up a government? What's the best idea? And that's kind of the way our government was set up, as we talked about earlier. It's a lot of smart guys in a room debating, how will our government look? What is the best way? And that's a really smart way to create a government. They come up with an idea of limiting its power. So we have limited government. Not only do we separate the branches, we're going to create a limited government. Here you can see barely, but the U.S. Constitution is putting a lasso over our government, limiting its power. Limiting the power of our government. No one branch is too powerful. We have checks and balances. And I think I went past this way too fast. Let me go back. Limited government. The government cannot do anything at once. And that's basically it. And we do this through a system of checks and balances as written in the Constitution. No one branch is too powerful. All of this is written in our U.S. Constitution. They thought of this plan 200 years ago. Very smart. They knew how to make sure not one branch could become too powerful. You could say, hey, this is a complicated maze, but not really. And so each branch can check the other branches, and there's the complicated maze maybe for some of you. And it's really not that complicated or complex once you really just slowly look at it. The executive branch can veto laws. The legislative branch can override those vetoes. The judicial branch can declare things unconstitutional. There's a bunch of different checks. But you do not necessarily need to know every single check. You need to know the main idea, and that is that our government, each branch, limits the other branches. No one branch is powerful. The government cannot do anything it wants. Its power is limited. Here are some examples of exactly how they can limit each other. A veto will get rid of the legislative branch's laws, and here comes the video. Oh, I can't show it. I feel sorry for that kid. The legislative branch wants to make a law. The executive branch vetoes it. But the legislative branch can fight back and override the veto. And so the law exists. There are a lot of different ways that checks and balances can occur. Let's jump over to the next video if the computer will allow me. Come on, computer. Don't freeze on me. Don't freeze on me. All right, we're back. A couple of the other things. Let's see, the judicial branch checking other branches. Here's a favorite video of everyone. There it is. Checking is kind of a violent thing, but not really. Figuratively, it is a violent thing, but the branches do not literally hit each other or beat each other. But it is an angry process, and you wonder why our government is always arguing with each other. Well, that's what they're designed to do. They argue until they get things right. If one person was always winning, they'd always get what they wanted and their power wouldn't be limited. The best way to limit the power of our government is to make them argue, make them fight it out until we get the best answers. So the first thing I want to talk about, we've talked about separation of powers. You can see it right there. Separation of powers is when we divide our government between three branches. Limited government is when we allow those branches to limit each other's power. And then federalism is the next thing I want to talk about. Federalism and power flows down. Federalism and power flows down. When we talk about the idea of federalism, the national or the federal government right here is the most powerful. The second powerful would be the state, and then the lowest will be the county level government. So if the national government and the state government get into a fight, the national or federal government is supreme. State wins against county or local government. Federalism is basically dividing the power of our government between state and national. The national government has some powers. For example, the military, or dealing with foreign countries. That's up to the national or federal government. That's their power. But the state government also has powers as well. Schools are up to states. If you've gone to school in another state, maybe you realize that you were taking different classes or studying different subjects, or you went to school for 185 days instead of 180 days, or maybe you went to school for 190 days. It's up to the state. That's their power. That is the idea of federalism. And this started way, way back in the early days of our country. We came up, the Federalists decided that our government should have a federalist system. A federal or national government should be supreme and should have a lot of control. It should have power, the power to tax, the power to raise an army. Our power should not lie in the individual states. When we first started our country with the Articles of Confederation, it was very much a loose confederation. It was not a united country. Each state had its own power. And so our country didn't have a strong military. Our country could not tax. And without tax dollars, our country cannot really get a lot of things done. It can't build roads. It can't build our economy. It can't fight off foreign powers. And so that's where we get federalism. There is some power still that remains in the state, but the majority of the power of our country remains in the national or federal government. Remember, it flows down, as we've already shown. Once again, we divide the power. The next term is popular sovereignty. What does popular sovereignty mean? It means people have power. Sovereignty mainly means authority or power. And so the power or the authority remains with the people. How do the people use their power? The people do not fight each other. We do not shoot each other or beat each other up to show our power. We show our power by voting. If you want something in America or you want to change things, that's all done through voting. You elect representatives or you vote for laws. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, when Kansas became a state, right before the Civil War, what the government said was, okay, Kansas, if you want to be a slave state or if you want to be a free state, it's up to you. This is popular sovereignty. You, the people, get to vote on the law. They chose slavery. Republicanism. This is the idea that we have a representative government. We elect officials to vote for us. We do not vote on every single issue. We do not vote on the budget. We, as people, do not vote on whether to go to war. We pick officials to vote on whether we will go to war. We elect officials to vote whether we will end a war and declare peace. We pick people to do the work for us. They are our servants. They work for us. So we can go about our normal days. We can sit around, we can watch TV, we can go to the park, we can play basketball after school, we can study, we can do whatever we want because we know that we have elected officials to take care of our government work for us. That is a republic that we live in. We live in a republic. We have republicanism is the idea that we pick people to do this for us. Experts, smart people, educated people. The last idea, the last of the 6 concepts that you have to know is individual rights. Just a quick review. We've talked about separation of power. That's dividing the power of the government into 3 separate branches with different jobs. The second connects with that, and that is limited government, where we take those 3 branches and we make sure that they're limiting each other's power. So not one branch can become too powerful. Because if one branch is too powerful, they can get whatever they want, and they can become abusive to the people, or they can only help out certain people. We want to make sure that our branches are working together, but also working together means fighting each other to keep each other from becoming too powerful. Then we talked about federalism. That's more of a vertical analysis, not really horizontal like we see the 3 branches. We see the national level. Below that we have the state level of government. Below that we have the local level of government, if you want to visualize that. Then we just talked about popular sovereignty, which is the people vote. People make decisions through voting. People have the power in this country, not the king, not the rich people, the people. Not the specific group. It's the people vote and the people make decisions. So it's popular sovereignty. And then I just talked about republicanism, or you might call that a representative government. That's where we make decisions by electing people to make decisions for us. We allow officials to run our government. We allow officials to maintain order. We allow officials to protect our rights. And those rights, what we're going to talk about now, individual rights. Everyone is born with rights, and the government must protect them. We as America pretty much are the first country to really, at least in modern era, to advance this idea, to promote this idea. And we promote this around the world today. Many of the conflicts we might get into throughout American history is us trying to get other countries to protect the rights of their citizens, protect the human rights of people. We have that here. A lot of countries don't. The idea is you to perform your duties, the government protects your rights. And the guy that we really credit for coming up with this idea that really helped start the American Revolution is John Locke. John Locke comes up with the idea, which seems obvious to us, but at the time was revolutionary. The idea that governments are not there to serve the king. Governments do not exist to make the king rich, or to conquer more land, or to help the emperor or the dictator, or to help the wealthy. The role of a government is, like we said before, to protect the rights of the people. That's why we create a government, so that the people's rights are protected, their life. No one can take your life. No one can take your liberty or your freedoms, and no one can take your property, and the government will make sure of that. And then we take it a step further with Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence, saying that the government's job is not just life, liberty, and property. It's really life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government's job is to allow for people to advance their lives, to advance their careers, to become educated, to become better people, to make this world better. And that's what a government does. Yes, they make sure that people are not killing each other. Yes, they make sure that our rights are protected. But they also make sure that I have the opportunity to live a wonderful life. And then the last is the Constitution. This is the big one for protecting your rights. Why are your rights protected? Because it's written in the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. There are numerous rights that you have that are now written down that the government has and will always protect. It is written down. That is the job of our government. That Bill of Rights is basically what they have to do every day. It's their to-do list. Make sure I'm protecting my citizens' freedom of speech. Make sure I'm protecting my citizens' privacy. Make sure that we are protecting our citizens' right to bear arms, or a right to an attorney, or a right to a trial, or the right to not be tortured. But it's not perfect. Our government is not perfect, nor is anything, especially in social studies. When we study these topics, there are times we fail. There are times when our rights are not necessarily being protected. But that's why we get to change things. If we're not happy with our government, if we don't think our government is protecting our right to privacy, we have popular sovereignty. We can vote. We can elect new officials that will uphold the Constitution. If you feel that your government is not doing a good job of protecting your freedom of speech, of protecting your freedom of religion, or protecting your privacy, then it's up to you to vote and elect new officials. It's up to you to vote and make new laws so that we uphold the Constitution, so that our rights are protected. The system is not perfect, but it works. Those are the 6 giant principles or concepts that you have to know. When you know those 6 concepts, you now can understand our government in whole. You can criticize and be critical of our government in whole.